When I started my career, there was only one woman in top management that I could look up to, and she was miles away from my pay grade. But she had made it, and that was enough for me to believe. Now, I'm inspired by women everywhere I turn, all ages, all walks of life, every single angle and view now open for us to experiment, dominate, enjoy. The world is thirsty to see us thrive as never before in history. But contrary to what most people think, I believe we must stop exploding in deafening noise, rather to implode into ourselves. This is a process where we find the best version of why we do instead of what we do, in order to be the catalysts of change in our work and personal environments, responding eloquently to life instead of reacting to it. When we cease defining ourselves by what we do and live ourselves as who we are, both at work and at home, we will live a personal singularity of sorts, only to become the leaders we wish to be. Because when we are true and upstanding to ourselves, others believe, care, and ultimately will follow.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Catalyst of Change Women Leaders in Science Seminar Series. We will be hearing today from a very distinguished leader in science and business, Yvonne Ochoa Rosellini. There is an interpretation available in Spanish, French, and Hindi. To access the interpretation, you choose the language of your preference by clicking the translation button at the base of your screen. This seminar will be recorded and made available on the CIMMYT YouTube channel. We will have an open Q&A session at the end, and you are also invited to submit questions via Slido for the speaker and also in the chat box of this Zoom. You will see a QR code in the screen that will give you access to Slido during the presentation. And also we will be sharing this one in the Zoom chat. We invite you to follow us in social media using the hashtag Women in Science. At the end of the conference, our special speaker will be interviewed by Aparna Das, member of Women in Science. Now, I would like to welcome Brian Goberts, Director General of CIMMYT, to officially open the event and welcome our speaker, Yvonne Ochoa Rosellini. Dr. Goberts, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Isabel, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. A very warm welcome to everybody on Zoom, and a special welcome to those that are connecting via our LinkedIn channel. At the International Mason Wheat Improvement Center, better known as CIMMYT, we are very happy to launch this series that we have defined TED Talk meets Fireside Chat. And why did we install this Catalysts of Change Women Leaders in Science seminar? It is to achieve a goal of broader representation and gender balance, inclusion in science. And we decided that we had admired the problem long enough now, and therefore needed to take action by showing role models that provide opportunities for those in the organization and beyond to look up to learn from, in order to define their own leadership style that fits with their own background and especially their own future. In this series, therefore, we highlight women who are leaders in all sorts and kinds of capabilities and capacities. You can be a leader of your family, your community, your business, your friends, the club where you belong to. There's leaders in all kinds of styles and sorts. Today, I'm very happy and proud, especially humbled, that I can present to you Yvonne Ochoa Rosellini. As Yvonne is an expert in strategy and finance, she has served as a CFO of Grupo Coppel, a company well known here in Mexico of over 8 billion in sales every year, more than 100,000 employees, and 40 million customers. Today, Yvonne serves on multiple boards, including no less than the board of one of the leading airlines in the country, Viva Aerobus. She formed her own firm, Convixión, in 2007, where she has advised owners and CEOs of multiple companies and organizations, and has accompanied over more than 40 transformation projects in business and public sector in Mexico, the United States, Argentina, and Spain, to just name a few. She has been active in multiple sectors, including banking, finance, retail, health, technology, biotechnology, housing services, manufacturing, restaurants, publishing, entertainment, marketing, and of course, agriculture. Yvonne was not just like that, named as one of the 100 most powerful women in Mexico by Forbes magazine in 2020, and once again by Expansion magazine in 2019 and 2020. Yvonne, thank you for honoring us with your presence here today, and thank you to everybody who is online. I'm sure that we will enjoy and learn a lot from Yvonne's outstanding leadership experience. And therefore, without further introduction, I would like to give a very warm welcome to Yvonne. Yvonne, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Madame. Thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you for such a lovely introduction of what I've done and where I've been in the world. And thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and to kick off this series of conferences that you're going to have on catalysts of change. I hope I do right by what you're trying to accomplish with the series. So I don't know if you can see my presentation now. But
yes, we can. All good.
Let me see. It's not.
Well, maybe you can make it in the presentation form.
That's what I am trying to do, and it's not letting me do it here. Let's see. There we go. That should do it. Is that it?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So you can see the presentation on the screen? All good?
All confirmed.
All good. Okay. So we wanted to talk about change and catalysts of change. And so I guess I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, am I really a catalyst of change? And have I been that and done that in my life? And the first thing I thought about, is I have done a lot of change. I was a banker for many years. Then I started doing business transformation, and I became a specialist in turning companies around. And then I've also been a C-suite director in different large companies, and I've also been a member of board of directors in companies. And it seems like I've done a lot of change, but I think the question was really, have I been a catalyst of change? Because the difference is a catalyst is a person that causes change, not that changes themselves. So I went through this journey and thought about, what have I done really? How have I become a catalyst of change for the world? And I guess what I come up with is, I started my journey as my entire journey has been with women. Most of my life was with women. I grew up with sisters. We're 5 sisters. I went to school in Mexico that was all girls. I went to school in the US. It was all girls. And then I went to college, and even though it was boys and girls, it turns out most of the people in the career I chose were women. So most of my life, I was thinking, I guess to be a catalyst of change, it's sort of who you are more than what you do. And when we were young, we always talked about who we wanted to be. When you were a kid, you always said who you wanted to be, when you grew up. And it was always about who do you think you'll be when you grow up? And even in college, you were thinking, who am I going to be when I go to work? And it's always about who you want to be. And then all of a sudden we start working, and it seems like that whole who do you want to be gets turned off, and it starts becoming, something more of what do you do? And interviews at work are more about what do you do? What is your skill set? What do you know? And it's not really about who you are. And sort of what starts happening in your life in work is you forget. And you start forgetting about who you are. You forget about your hopes and dreams about, family or your personal life. You forget about all the ideas and the knowledge and the things you wanted to learn about. And we forget about all the travel and all the adventures that we wanted to have. And we start conforming, right? We conform And especially as women, we start trying to conform to the view of what the world, believes we should be when we go to work. And so we start forgetting who we are, and we start falling into what we do. And not only that, but, all these stereotypes of what we need to do when we're at work start coming up, right? And so I've been through a lot of experiences. I've been told to wear a uniform because, what do? Women wear uniforms. All the men don't wear uniforms at work, but there was, one job where all the women had to wear uniforms. And then you go through all the stereotypes of, maybe you're the one that serves the coffee in the meeting, even though you're actually presenting, or you have the material, or you're the analyst and you're still serving coffee. There's all these, stereotypes about how we need to dress or what we need to do. I've been told that, I was told at one point that if I wore a skirt, maybe I would be more successful. So all these ideas about what we have to do, are we the person that has to take notes? I've been told that I need to take notes because I'm the woman. And I've been told that maybe I should go home and take care of the children. So it's all about, it's never about who you are as a person, what you're trying to accomplish, but we just sort of fall into this, lifestyle of, what are we doing? And it starts feeling like you're opening doors, and, I kept opening doors and changing, and I did something different. And then I went to work somewhere else, and then I tried something new. And it seemed like I was always opening a door, and you feel like there's change, but there's a big difference between, changing and opening the next door than really being a catalyst of change in the world, which is, I think, what we're dreaming of when we're kids. And so it was very interesting. And if you think of these and you look at this picture and you think, well, this is, a lot of doors, and doors that lead to nowhere is sort of the first thing you think about. But then you have a realization, I think, some point in your career, and you think, well, it's not about the doors that lead to nowhere. I think these are the doors that open the possibilities to everything. And I think that's the change of mindset that when it sets in, and you stop thinking about, what skills am I, what am I learning, or what am I doing every day? You start thinking about what are the possibilities, and who am I, and can I walk out there and sort of explore the world in a different way? And I think that's when you start really focusing differently, looking at things from a very different perspective. Taking a good look in the horizon, and not so close up, just looking at our everyday, but really looking ahead and saying, who did I want to be? What was I trying to create in my life? And sort of find your own color. And then there's this marvelous woman that's been taking pictures of people all over the world, and she has this project and humanity, and she says, we all have our own Pantone, we all have our own color. And you see all these pictures of people, and they're all different colors, and we see life in black and white, but it truly is a spectrum of any different possibility of who we want to become. And when we start looking at our own color, it turns out that this sense of invisibility in our everyday lives, of sort of falling into work where we just go to work and very automatically come in, come out, and feel like, nothing's designed for me, and nothing works for me, and nobody's paying attention to me. And then when you stop thinking about all these issues, when you're really thinking about, who do I want to be, and who am I, and what am I doing here? And it starts coming in a very, very different way of looking at life. And I think it's funny when they say, we need to train women for work. And I said, no, we don't need to train women for work. I think we need to go home and include men at home, and include families at home, and look back at who we are at home and not who we are at work. Because, work doesn't define us. It's just a means to an end. And I think as you start going through this journey of what really, what your thoughts are, and how you can process life, and how you can impact life, then things start getting very different, and you start finding your true abilities, because it's not about the skills in the sense of, I'm an amazing doctor in science, and I can fiddle with genetics and make, a plant grow differently. But all of those things that you're doing are actually coming from a place of who you are. You can only accomplish those things because you were able to communicate, you were able to ideate and innovate, and you were able to work with other people and get things done. And all these things, when you think of when we communicate with people, when we work in teams, when we analyze new things, when we come up with new ideas, all of these things have to do with people. It's about how we interact with other people, gaining trust, understanding how we work, getting to know what they're trying to say. And if you really look at it, this transformation, when we're really creative and new, and we're affecting change, it actually comes from a place of who we are and how we interact with other people. And I think most of all, one of the things that we forget and we need to go back to in terms of who we are, it's we are people, we are social, and we're a big society, and society isn't built at work, society is built at home. And I think we need to remember that we're all homemakers, we're all caretakers, and most of us, in fact, 85% of women, in the case of women, 85% of women in the world are parents, are mothers. So we can't forget this whole sense of who we are outside of work. And I think when we focus on that and we really put all of this together, then it's sort of that feeling of singularity, of really being in tune and sort of advancing through our careers and our lives in a way that really resonates with who we wanted to be. And all of a sudden, these stairs that we were going up with so much effort, it's like we get on an electric staircase and everything starts flowing very quickly. And guess what? When people see us flow and see us grow and see us be ourselves and starting to process life in this way, we become the leaders of the next generation. We become the leaders of change. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at through this whole journey of what I've been through in life is more than changing jobs or changing what I did. Many times I was a catalyst for change. I have been a catalyst for change. And I think I've only been a catalyst for change as I've gone along and started integrating who I am. And looking back, I was thinking, in science and women in science and have I had any impact on science? And the interesting thing is I've been involved in extraordinary science. I've been involved with messenger RNA 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when it was still, not popular, became a household name after COVID and vaccines. I've been involved in neurological regeneration of neurons. It's amazing to think of that. I've been involved in microbiology in agriculture, bringing the elements of fire in nature to growing crops, bringing microbes to improving soils. I've been involved in a lot of environmental issues. So I think this it's very interesting. I never saw myself as science, but we all think of ourselves as, we think of these big things we need to do in life, and we want to be change makers, but we want to make something new. But actually, some of us, just like the butterfly wings that have this tremendous effect on life, there's very small things that we can do, but we're actually affecting change. And I've been a catalyst for change. I like to think that I've been a catalyst for change in my own way, as a business leader and as an expert in finance, working with investments and working to promote things that would have never come to fruition if we hadn't had the business side behind them also to make them grow and come to life. So I think the journey of having been able to do this never came from a place of what I did. I'm not a doctor in science. I wasn't an expert in neurons. I wasn't an expert in microbes. I'm not an expert in climate. I haven't been an expert in food nutrition, but I've been involved in all these things from a different perspective and from a perspective of who I am, of people being able to trust that when I recommend in business or when I recommend in finance, what I'm doing is really, it's about me. It's not about my track record or my knowledge, but it's really about somebody that comes up to you and speaks from trust. People can trust that I've done my work, that I've gone through the process, that I understand what we're investing in, and that I'm recommending something that who knows if scientifically it'll work or not, but you can trust that the process, and so they say, ask Yvonne. They're not saying ask Dr. Yvonne in science. They're saying ask Yvonne, who's been around and who has built, this view of the world where she can really bring us change from a perspective of, bringing together who she is. And so I think that's the message I'd like to leave with you today, which is how do we focus on being catalysts of change, and not from what we do, but really from becoming people that are completely whole and completely happy and can actually come to work and bring ideas and innovation and change through who we are. And that's a very brief message I wanted to leave. And I'm all ready for Aparna. Hello, Aparna, how are you?
Hi, Yvonne. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for that excellent talk. Before I go into the next, I would just give a brief introduction of myself. I am a woman in science, and I am a member of Women in Crop Science. I am also the convener for the CGIR ERG, that's the Employee Resource Group, called as WIRES, Women in Research and Science. So very passionate. If you can see, I'm very passionate about women's cause in science. A breeder by experience. Around 26 years, I have been in the field of genetics and plant breeding. And apart from that, I am a very strong advocate of gender equality in scientific community. I strongly recognize the underrepresentation of women in STEM, and I do whatever I can to increase gender diversity and equality, especially in the scientific community. So it's really my honor to interview you today, Yvonne, more in sort of an informal chat, and especially the talk that you gave. I think it resonates with me on the fact that when you said it's not the change, but being a catalyst of change, just not changing yourself depending on the perspective of how people are looking at you, but thinking about what are the changes you are able to bring, just not changing yourself. So I think that resonates very, very strongly with me. And it's a great message at the start of this series that we are doing, Catalysts of Change. And thanking you on that, I'm looking forward to an engaging conversation with you. To start the session, I would ask you a few questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for them to really interact with you.
Love it. Thank you.
To begin with, maybe I would like to ask you, in all the experiences that you have had in the different role profiles that you have worked in, because you have done many different roles, I can see from the things that you presented. What are the major challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them? Any one or two major challenge?
So I think, thank you, Aparna, and it's an honor to be with you, Dr. Aparna Das. And I think, so the biggest challenge, I think, was sort of going through that motion of, when you start work, people sort of focus on your curriculum, right? And at the beginning, you don't have a curriculum, and then you do have, but I think people are focusing on this page that says, I went to X school and I studied X thing and I worked in such and such a place. And, you know, I've stopped doing that over the years. Now I interview with no curriculum in front of me. I don't look at the piece of paper, and I actually look at the person. And I think that's been my biggest challenge over the years. It's instead of trying to define ourselves in work from a piece of paper of what the things, the list of things that we've done, it's really understanding. And it's so enriching when you listen to people interview without the piece of paper. And I throw them off a bit because I'm like, I have no idea who you are. I didn't read your resume. I don't know what you've done in life. So, you know, tell me all about you. And all of a sudden you see this whole different conversation coming up. And it's a conversation about, you know, how they've sort of traveled through life and what has taken them to one job or another, or one opportunity or the next. And it just becomes absolutely different. And I think, you know, that's been my biggest challenge, is stop looking at all these stereotypes and all these biases that we have when we look at people, or when we think of projects or think of things that we need to get done. And if we really think of the people, it's only people that, you know, I always say companies don't exist, right? What exists are the people that wake up in the morning and actually get the job done at the company. So why aren't we looking at the people? And it's funny because, you know, the first time I went in for an interview, and it was my first job, and they said, well, you know, the questions were, are you pregnant? Will you get pregnant? Will you take off to do an MBA? Because I was very young. And do you speak English? And all of a sudden, that's what defined me. And I thought, that's tremendous. You know, today when I look at young people and they come to work, I ask them, who do you think you're going to be? You know, what does your life look like when you're 30 or 40 or 50? Because that's what we need to build. Because if you are thinking of a family, right? How do we build a career for you that involves family? If you're thinking of traveling, if you're a person that would like to live in different places, how do we find you a job and something international where you can travel and go different places? Why aren't we adjusting our work lives to who we are and who we want to be, and not what we think we need to do? Because that's how we end up in these places. So I think that's the challenge, Aparna, to really focus on the person and not the task.
That's a very interesting answer for a challenge, because I personally, when you talked about interviews, I would be like, okay, can we do blind interviews, in the sense, just look at the resume instead of seeing what is female, male, and all that. So I would always want to tell my committee members, can we just look at what is the strength of this person? Because in the field I am in breeding, it's a very, very male dominated. We sometimes just tend to reject people saying, it's a woman, maybe she can't travel enough in the field, or she's not tough enough. So it's very interesting to hear from you that don't even look at all the things, just look at the person, get somebody there and ask them questions. And that's a very different insight. And I hope we can implement that at some point during our hiring processes. All right, maybe, like I said, I come from a field which is male dominated. I think most of the fields nowadays, especially in the leadership roles, quite male dominated. As a woman leader in a male-dominated industry, because the industries you have worked in also would have majority of male there, what strategies have you found to be effective in breaking the barriers and advancing your career in those organizations? And any advice to the women who are aspiring for leadership roles?
I think at the very beginning, and sort of what I was trying to say was, you know, at the beginning, we try to conform to the stereotypes, both men and women. It's not only, you know, how we're perceived, it's also how we approach things, right? So I was trained to be polite and serve coffee, right? That was my stereotype. And so you just think, well, I'll translate that into my work, right? Because and then you realize, well, I'm falling into so the whole beginning of my career was very complicated, because I was trying to figure out, you know, how do I fit in and how do I conform? And then what you do is you sort of default for some time into, well, maybe I need to be a man, right? So maybe I need to act like a man or dress like a man, and it's just crazy. There's no way, Aparna. There's no way that we can live a life where we're constantly thinking about how we're going to fit in or who is not letting us fit in. And so I think finally I just gave up and said, well, it doesn't really matter. I'll just do whatever I want to do. whatever I'm good at doing. And eventually, if they don't like it, I guess they'll get rid of me. And if they like it, I'll start advancing in the process. And I think every time when I did find that I was sort of reaching a dead end, like, well, this is a place where, you know, very evidently it's going to take me 10 years to be able to go to the next step, then maybe switch out and do something different. But I think it goes both ways. It goes both ways. And we also need to show up and say, this is what I want to do. And I actually can do this. And I understand your concern is I'm a woman and maybe you think I don't travel, but why don't we have the conversation? Because the problem is we don't have the conversation. So let me explain to you, maybe I do want to travel the first 5 or 7 years of my career. And then maybe I want to pause travel and I want to go have my children, have a family, right? And maybe I want to take it up again later on. Why don't we design our careers in that way, right? So give me a job that the first 5 or 7 years are going to be very intense in the field. And then I'm going to take all that knowledge and bring it into a type of job where I'm working more at a lab. So why, and that's what I realize is that when we hire people, we talk about having, careers planned, but there is really no career plan. We just sort of get people for the job. And so that's why we don't meet the expectations, right? Because that's not the point. It's about sitting with you and actually planning how this is going to work out for the next 5 or 10 years. And then maybe we could understand each other differently. And you'd be like, I had a woman that was amazing on the field for 5-7 years. And now I have someone that's amazing that has a field experience working in the lab. And you know what? I'm happy. I got it as an employer. I got everything I needed. And you as an employee, you got everything you needed. And we don't have those conversations up right now. We try to fit people into boxes for a certain amount of time. It's like, and it's not, I'm going to sit here in this job for many years. I can do many different things, right?
Yep. Great message, having that conversation, being open about it and discussing it. I think speaking up our mind and not being very hesitant would go a long way in giving us that what we are wishing to achieve.
I think so.
Maybe something also I would be very interested to know from your point of view that in all organizations, we talk about diversity and inclusion. They are very critical for driving innovations and success of an organization. Do you have any specific example in the organizations that you have worked in that how were these values embraced by an organization and what impact they had on that company when those were implemented?
I'm going to default back to my same response. And I think it's the default response is in companies where you're trying too hard to fit people into boxes. I find that it doesn't seem natural and it's not comfortable. And see, diversity is, in the way I look at it, diversity is really about being comfortable with anything in life. And it's not only men, women, or any kind of, gender conversation. It has to do with, I have had to work with marketing specialists, agriculture, specialists, industries like construction or retail. I've had to talk to people that come from very different, perspectives of life. And I've also had to work with all sorts of different kinds of people, because even if we are all women, every single woman is different, right? So going back to that conversation about the Pantones and saying every single person has a different color or tonality or difference, we need to be able to be comfortable with the entire spectrum. And that means that if we try to put people in boxes and say so this company has a very open diversity policy because we have 2 of these and 3 of those, will never end. Because if we started making a box for every single thing that's important to us in life as individuals, we would have 8 billion boxes, right? So I think the people that sort of get rid of the sense of the companies that get rid of the sense of, how do I classify and how do I make a policy and how do I write this out and how am I absolutely politically correct, and just default back into, okay, we're all just people. We all just come in to work, in the morning. We all are trying to figure out our lives. We're all good. Let's just be respectful of each other. I think that's where you see the difference. And you can see it in companies that the companies that have been most successful, and there's one particular company that I really like, and you can just see it in every single communication that they have, in every single meeting that you attend. That culture is just so embedded in respect for everybody that they don't have to pronounce themselves in any other way. You're just very comfortable in the environment. And I think they pull it off very nicely. And I think that's the secret, just not trying to make it so complicated.
Yeah, so I think that organizations need to be intentional in their approach. So if they think that they can create this environment of inclusivity, it is possible. It's just that they need to see what are the different ways.
Well, inclusivity is more than how many people of each do I choose. I think inclusivity is teaching values such as we respect absolutely everybody in every single sense of the word. Anytime somebody is going to speak, we listen, we look at you in the eyes, we put our phones down, we actually have a conversation, we listen to what you're saying. When we interview, we're not looking at the piece of paper, we're looking at the person and how we connect them with what they're doing. And so all of these things that I've talked about, I think it's about, of course you need to be intentional. You're absolutely right. Yeah. There needs to be intention. And if there is no intention, then it's very complicated. And you look at these workplaces that don't have intention, and they're not happy places to be. But I think you're right. The difference is, where does your intention, where does that energy of intention go? It goes to accepting everybody, or trying to have all the right little, sort of boxes and discourse, right?
Yep. So Yvonne, with your career pathway, the graph, you have grown a lot in the leadership roles. What are some of the key skills and qualities you feel that women leaders should cultivate, or women should cultivate to really go up in the leadership roles so that they excel in their careers? Any advice for all of us who are on here listening to you?
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting because they speak about women in these, in all these academic papers and everything. They talk about the soft skills, and soft, sort of in our minds, right, and our biases are like, well, hard skills are better than soft skills, right? In our set of values, we sort of think it, and I don't think so. I think the soft skills, which are very natural to women, are the most important skills. And I think as you go ahead in life, they're even more important, because as you go along in your career and as you go walk up that corporate ladder, is the infamous corporate ladder, I think the skills that you need to keep going have nothing to do with your knowledge base. They have to do with your person base, right? Are you capable of getting something done, negotiating with different views, people that are very complicated in every side? And as you keep going up the ladder, people get they're more ingrained in the way that they think and what they do. And so I think those negotiating skills are so important. I think the capacity of just listening, the being able to listen to what people are saying before actually giving our own opinion. I think all these skills that women have, I think we're amazing and seasoned, and we're so prepared for sort of everything that comes at us in life, whatever it is, that I think those are the skills that are most important. So I would trust myself even more as a woman, in management than before. I think we're better at that, overall handling, bigger and more complicated situations than just fulfilling tasks. So I think women are absolutely prepared for management.
Yvonne, I loved your statement that soft skill is natural for women. We keep on hearing about training for soft skills, but when you said it's so natural for women, you really made my day, because that is something very true. And that if we can be recognized for that, I think we can go much higher in the corporate ladder or growth in the organizations.
Well, it's so funny, Aparna, because they say, I hear all this training, right? We're training women. And I go nuts every time I hear the training, because what happens? I think we hear so much from the outside, and we continuously hear we need to train. And then there's content everywhere. And then everywhere you look today, there's another course, and I'm thinking, it was very funny. So somebody the other day said they were interviewing me for for a board position. They said, well, what courses have you taken to be a board member? And I'm like, well, I could go do 20 courses, or I could just trust that I've been in business for 30 years and I've been around enough, right, to understand what I'm doing. And if you really need somebody to come and stick a sticker on me that says, I went to such and such a college to do such and such a training, and it doesn't mean that you don't keep training or learning. It just means that, change the view of everybody telling us that we need to train, prepare, we need to help women succeed. We need to train women to get better. It has nothing to do with training. It has to do with going back into what is my common sense and how do I get things done? You've been doing genetic seeds for 30 years. What could I possibly explain to you? Do I seriously need somebody to put a little seal of approval on your work? No, I think it's trusting that through the process of your work and experience, you are prepared to do different and new things. So unless it's a very particular skill that you need to learn because there's a new science or a new thing, I get that. But we've become these people that need certifications and need all these additional stamps that say you're good at this, right? And so that just completely, if we have them, that's great, but they don't work unless the inside, the confidence in oneself actually works. Everything else it's just extra. It has to come from like a very deep sense of belonging and trust in who we are and what we can do.
Yvonne, I would have loved to continue talking to you. It's been such a great session talking to you, learning, resonating a lot of things, what I believe in, hearing it from you, and also learning something new. It's been great. I would like to have continued with this conversation, but I would also like to give opportunity to other people to have these conversations with you. So thank you so much from my side, and I'll hand it over to Isabel to take on the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Love talking.
Thank you. Thank you. We are grateful for your stimulating discussion and contributions. We appreciate a partner for this very interesting interview. So now we would like to open the floor for the Q&A session. So we are attending your questions in the slide application. Also, you are invited to write down your questions in this chat box, or you can raise your hand to make your question. So the first question that we have received by Slido is, from your perspective, what does CIMMYT represent for the potential to be a catalyst of change?
What does CIMMYT represent?
Yes. From your perspective, what does CIMMYT represent for the potential to be a catalyst of change?
Well, I think the whole history of CIMMYT is about change. I think and it's interesting because if I think of CIMMYT sort of in two ways, right? So one is there's a whole history of every single is this strain of seeds, right? And you have this whole library of seeds and the whole history of agriculture, of a big part of agriculture in your keeping, right? So that's so interesting because it's like there's this whole history out there of all the possibilities that have come through life in seeds and in maize, no? But then you look at what you do with that. And so you take all of that knowledge base and all of that history and you convert it into something new. And you're constantly offering people, companies and organizations and farmers, you're offering such new possibility along the way. And so important, right? Because you're also keeping people fed. And it's such an important part of the food chain. And I think it's amazing the work that you do, and I think it's absolutely a catalyst for change and constantly a catalyst for change.
Thank you, Yvonne. So we go for the next question. As a young woman in science, I found it quite challenging to be a leader during fieldwork. How do I help my male colleagues to listen, take direction from me?
So So people don't take direction from us, or at least that's my theory. I think people do not take direction from us just because we're named on an org chart as the leader. So if I'm the director, or if that's what the org chart says and all these people report to me, it doesn't necessarily mean that that people will follow what I say or what I do. And I think following what you say or do has to do with it really has to do with what I call moral authority, not given authority from an org chart. And I think moral authority comes from the inside. So again, like I can be the most experienced person on the team in a certain skill, and maybe that's the reason why they put me in the leadership position. But the only way that people are going to follow you is because not only do you have that knowledge, but you have the capabilities to make me trust you, first of all, and trust that what you're saying or where you're leading us to makes sense. And it also, I need to feel like you really are the person that has the solution, or are listening to everybody else to come up with the best solution. So, I think, again, how do I get everybody to pay attention and changing and coming back to what I was talking about a while ago? We feel this invisibility, like nobody's looking at us, nobody's paying attention. And really, when we go back inside and look at, well, what are we doing, and how do we come across to people, and how confident we are when we act, that's really what's going to make the difference in people wanting to follow us into where we're going. Because everywhere you look at in life, even as a kid, you think, well, in school, sort of what were the kids that you were trying to follow in recess? And it was the kids that seemed like they had it figured out, that were confident in themselves, that had something to say. So I think if we default back again into, what are we as a person, and not what are we as a skill, I think that's what really changes our capabilities to lead.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you so much. Thanks for the great insights. Any suggestions how to have such open conversations, ensuring they do not turn discriminatory or emphasize stereotypes?
Yes, absolutely. So conversations are always tricky, right? Because we're always interpreting. And so I think conversations, at least what we can control, what is on our side, is how we deal with the conversation, right? So it's very funny because we walk through life thinking that it's about what everybody else is doing. And I think we need to go through life thinking about what we're doing, and then sort of everybody else will respond. So if in these conversations, which are hard conversations to have, if we come in and we're open, if something gets misconstrued, I can always say, I really didn't want to take it that way. I didn't want to understand it that way. Can we go over this again? That's really not the place where I wanted to end up in this conversation. Maybe we can pause and take it up again. But I think it's if when we bring in that energy of I want an open and trusting conversation again with you, because I'm trying to come up with something for my career, for me as a person, and I'm not trying to have a conversation that's mechanical about what my position is in the company or what my salary is. No, I'm trying to talk about my entire life. I'm trying to talk about what's good for me in this job, or what's working for me, and I think if we walk in with an open mind into, we are going to have a conversation that has nothing to do with your bias, but it doesn't have anything to do with my bias, right? So we need to be able to listen as well when we're in conversations, so we don't interpret from our own paradigms or our own unintentional biases. And that will also help to get, better conversations going. So I think it's sort of an exercise in communication, in effective communication. And effective communication is actually challenging. It's very hard to communicate assertively, and especially in environments where we're coming at from different angles. But forget what the others are doing. Focus on how you're coming to the conversation. I think that's the key to at least getting more than half of it, right.
Thank you, Yvonne. Have the challenges been greater as a woman, Latina, or do you?
Yes, it has.
or or due to your education or age? How did you overcome those challenges?
Yes. Well, let's see. Again, I think it's the same. I think at the beginning, people, when we don't fulfill the expectation for a certain job, like, oh no, we're used to seeing a man in this job. So the first reaction from people is usually, no, this isn't going to work, right? I need a man for this job, or I need someone that, or I need a certain type of capability for this job. And so we all have our ideas of what we're expecting, and when people come in and it's unexpected, you sort of sit back for a second, and the first thing you say is, no, that's not going to work. But again, if we're trying to go into, and if I ever was trying to go into something that was that I was the odd person out, so I'd sit in a meeting and it was 5, 6, 7 men, I was the only woman in the room. There's two choices that I could have made there. I can make it so evident that I am the person that's different in the room, or I can just make it so comfortable to be sitting with me. And that doesn't mean that I agree to everything, and that doesn't mean that I do whatever they ask me to do, and that doesn't mean that I comply with what other people are expecting. I'm still myself, but I make people comfortable working with me. And so, and especially comfortable in the process of change. So for example, when I've come on a board and it was all men, and all of a sudden you're changing the whole dynamic of how the conversation is going to flow. Well, how can I help you through this process of having a different conversation, but then making you see how it's actually as comfortable, or maybe even better than you had before, or maybe more interesting than you had before, because there's a different perspective. And so slowly coming in and helping people to change their paradigms when they're not ready for it, I think is much more constructive than trying to come in and sort of boom, make everything very complicated. So I think over the years and the challenges of what is expected of me, or what people think of me as I walk in, that sort of changes as you start flowing in the conversation, right? And I don't hide anything. I don't even hide my age. I leave my hair gray. So I'm like, this is it. This is what you get. And people usually are comfortable when you're comfortable.
Thank you. By the way, I would like to say that we have more than 200 participants in the Zoom session and by our social media. So thank you so much for this great conversation. How would you advise or encourage men to be advocates and allies in building a gender equitable organization?
So I think when you want a gender balanced organization, I think the first thing you want is if you want gender balance, if that's really, if you're really looking for the numbers for some reason, and you want to bring people in, and you want quotas, you can go find people that, you can go find women that fit the descriptions of what you need. The only caveat there is when we try to put people in places where they're not comfortable, or where they or in a very not in a natural way, it may backfire on us. So I think building a gender balanced organization is really opening up to these conversations of career. I think the companies that have been most successful at getting women to participate and women to really get to the top are the companies that have been able to find balance in the career paths versus the personal paths, and who also recognize that it's not about how do we bring women into the workplace, but how do we improve the way that we look at work, and we let people go and have their own personal lives. That means that we also get, if we make men go home and participate at home, it also helps for gender equality because it allows for women to come to work. So it's not, so the company should be very, very thoughtful about not only policies to integrate women, but really thoughtful of how we're supporting people in their personal lives altogether, whatever they are. Whatever their personal choices are, if we as a company can finish our work early and we can promote respect for people's personal lives and people getting out there and having time for themselves and for their own growth and for their own, activities and their own families and their own caretaking and their own homemaking, I think it's not only about how do we get women out early to go work and do their job at home, but it's really how do we promote a company that really that looks at the individuals as individuals that have a personal life and that need a work-life balance. And I think that's really what attracts a gender balance. And it's a much more natural approach to bringing the talent in rather than really, again, trying to fill those boxes, and just with whatever, because we're trying to fill quotas, no?
Thank you so much, Yvonne, very illustrative. So we are going to go for the last question. How can we as women support each other in these efforts, such as to be more confident, to build the negotiation skills, to listen well? Please.
Absolutely be confident. What's the worst scenario? I mean, we also look at life as, this sort of, it's very black and white, and it's very like, oh, if I don't say the right thing and what's going to happen if I don't do the right thing. And you know what? We make mistakes and we do things that don't make sense a lot of times in life, all through our lives, and still people, love us and stick around with us, and it's okay. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to perform. And when we take the pressure off to perform a task and we go again, default back into, how do I come and be comfortable in the situation, try to approach the situation from the trusting of, if I fail, I get up and I do it again. It's not the end of the world. I think that putting things into perspective, and I keep thinking, you're at work and we think it's the end of the world when we're making certain decisions or doing certain tasks. And then if you really open up and think of the entire life and planet and everything that's going on in any given day or any given, you're thinking, this is it's the decision I'm making right now is probably not going to change the course of the world, right? It'll participate in what the course of the world is, but it's not going to change the course of the world. And it's okay. I can fail at times and it's okay. So I think, just getting ourselves into a mode where we're just happy and comfortable instead of walking into work and stressing about absolutely everything. And that's when really, I think our confidence shines and things work out.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for your great talk and stimulating presentation. So now I would like to invite Brian Goberts, Director General of CIMMYT, to officially close the event. Dr. Goberts, over to you.
Thank you, Isabel, and thanks a lot, Yvonne, for this gift, the gift of your story. And as we are learning by doing as individuals, as teams, and as the organization, to do the right thing, you really, really inspired us with this conversation. With this also, we kicked off our seminar series with over 200 participants, and this is just a start. I remember you, Yvonne, saying that we need to listen and lead by example, and that will allow us to be catalyst of change to resolve tomorrow's problems today. If you are all interested on who's up next, and I'm happy to say that we have speakers lined up all the way up to 2024. If you want to know who's the next catalyst of change, stay tuned and come back in 2 weeks. Thanks a lot. Have a nice afternoon. Have a nice evening. Keep going.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here. My name is Altagracia Gomez, and I chair a conglomerate named PEO. I find inspiration to do my work in many different things, starting from our co-workers to our communities. But we would summarize it in one thing. We believe that purpose legitimizes power, and in doing so, our mission and our ambitions are always aligned, and we strive for creating holistic wealth. There needs to be two things that every leader in different sectors should have. The first thing is representation. So a leader should represent your values, your principles, and your goals. And it should be an aspirational thing to think about your leader. And the second thing that every leader should have is administration capabilities. This means to be able to solve problems, to determine which issues are urgent and which issues are very important, to be able to learn on the spot, and to be able to work as a team and be disruptive without being destructive.
Please join our next seminar from our series, Catalyst of Change, Tuesday, July 18th. Stay tuned for the Zoom link.